free speech is free speech.
Okay. So I'm kind of curious how you square that with the letter that you sent this morning to V-Sphere, claiming that, you were going to try to sue her for slander. If free speech is free speech, then why are you threatening your critics with lawsuits?
Well, defamation is different.
So would you call misidentifying a shooter's sexuality defamation?
No, I wouldn't. Like I said, there's already a community note on it. So I'm glad that people now.
And you admit that it's wrong, right? Was the Uvalde
yeah,
shooter
and
trans?
I wasn't the creator of that image.
Sure, but you can imagine if somebody amplified wrong information.
The media, like Washington Post and other places, they lie all the time. They're never held accountable. They never remove it. They lie and lie and lie. So I am not gonna. If you want to hold me to that level, then I get to hold you to that level as well, and all the other media. So I just don't think, it's not accurate to compare it, because
Was the Uvalde shooter trans?
the Uvalde shooter wasn't trans.
Got it. And so I guess knowing that you've posted wrong information, you're saying it should stay up and everybody else should be allowed to keep whatever they have up as well. Is that sort of your stance? Am I accurately understanding it?
Is there a law against?
No, not asking law. I'm just
lying?
asking your personal sort of opinion. I'm just kind of curious because it seems like you have come after other people, such as V-Sphere and other critics, saying you posted wrong information about me, take it down. I totally get that. That's your prerogative.
It's different with defaming a journalist like that. They're defaming me.
And you don't think that calling a shooter trans when they weren't trans is defaming anyone?
No.
Can you? You know what? I just actually had a secondary thought about that as we're live here. Calling someone trans is defamatory? The initial things that I pulled out of that were that someone who just murdered a mass amount of people is what we call libel proof. Typically speaking, they don't have a reputation to be harmed unless. What's her face? Taylor Lorenz was suggesting that it was defamatory for the trans community at large, in which case I said, I would invite her to read Kentucky Fried Chicken of Bowling Green. But now I'm thinking, I just realized, the ultimate irony, that just even calling someone trans is defamatory because there's some inherent insult about being called trans. That's a very interesting reflex that Taylor Lorenz would have there. And by the way, people, I think I'm going to do a Locals exclusive, just walk through that interview and give my commentary analysis. Taylor Lorenz, for those of you who don't know, I guess she calls herself a journalist. At one point in that interview with Shia Raichik, the Libs of TikTok creator, she says, she confirms, this is Taylor Lorenz, that she doesn't monetize any of her content online because she... I guess is paid by the Washington Post. It was a 56-minute interview. And if any of you had any doubts as to how genuinely ill-informed, ignorant, and I didn't want to use the word stupid because maybe one day I'll interview Taylor Lorenz and, I don't want to insult her intelligence. Wildly ignorant for a journalist on the one hand, but it was the most bizarre interview I've ever seen. Sitting outside, wearing a face mask in, what year are we? 2024. And I made the joke to Taylor, who blocked me. Am I still blocked? I think I'm still blocked by Taylor Lorenz on Twitter. I made the joke to Taylor Lorenz. Why? You're wearing a mask outside. You just gave an interview on MSNBC indoors barely 5 months ago, and you weren't wearing a mask? I mean, what is she suggesting? I wanted to make the identity politics joke. Is she making a jab at Jews? Like she thinks Jews are vectors of disease so that she has to wear a face mask when being interviewed or interviewing Shia Raichik, but she doesn't wear one when being interviewed by the person Ruhle, R-U-H-L-E. I don't know who she is on MSNBC. Is she suggesting that Shia Raichik is a dirty person? Wearing a mask outdoors while interviewing Shia Raichik. So I could have gone with that, ethnic identity politics joke, and I didn't really like it because it's not my style. So I just went with a vector of disease. Does she think Shia Raichik is dirty? She's wearing a mask outdoors in 2024 where she was not wearing a mask indoors 4 months ago when doing an indoor interview with, what's her name? Something Rule of MSNBC, some terrible thing. Set that aside. Maybe she's wearing a mask outdoors because she doesn't want to be seen with Shia Raichik. She's afraid of what might happen if people see that she's having a coffee with Shia Raichik. Whoever said Rumble's not working, refresh, it's working. I see my ugly punum there. The interview was it was terrible. Terrible because it's what happens when someone has a list of questions and doesn't actually listen to the bloody answers. Suggesting that someone who committed mass murder has a reputation susceptible of defamation, stupidity beyond words. To suggest, if that wasn't what the suggestion was, that by calling him trans, wrongly saying that he was trans, but there have been many other people committing murder in the headlines recently who were, that's defamatory potentially on the trans community. You have to be able to identify sufficiently identified or identifiable individuals for there to be the potential for defamation. In that Kentucky Fried Chicken case of defamation, I think they were saying that one of the franchises was dirty and they weren't, I think there's something along those lines. And they said they didn't specify which franchise. They didn't specify any group of individuals susceptible of defamation. And then just overt ignorance, overt ill-informed journalism, where Taylor Lorenz, in responding to some of Shia Raichik's questions, have you seen some of this sexually explicit material that they're giving to kids? And she said, no, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen that graphic novel depicting a BJ. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, weren't you putting Shia Raichik on blast, accusing her of wrongly shining the spotlight on the arguable but not arguable pornography that they're teaching kids at school? Weren't you the one complaining that she was doing that? And you haven't looked at the actual books that Shia Raichik was putting on blast? I mean, it's irresponsible journalism. It's not just proud ignorance. It's not just overt stupidity. It's irresponsible journalism. Whoever says Rumble is definitely not working, let me just show you here. Refresh, live. Let me get the volume up. Here, hold on. We're gonna do some Viva Inception right now. Here. Rumble is definitely working. Here, refresh. I'm showing you. Now we're going to see me talking to me. Hey, Viva, how's it going? Here, hold on. We're gonna do some Viva Inception. It's working right now. Okay, this might be trolling. Rumble is definitely working. Okay, done. We're done. That's it. It's working. So there's the evidence. YouTube is buffering today. It might be because I just put out a little pre-stream vlog about Letitia James, and it got copy claimed, people. Look, I used 58 seconds of Letitia James explaining how Trump is an illegitimate president and he needs to be what was the word she said? Jeez Louise, what's the word? Not indicted. Yeah, brought up on charges of obstruction of justice. Of course, I'm cutting that part of the video because I'm not making money for whoever the hell this right now who wants to claim that. Bunch of copyright trolls who don't understand fair use and commentary, but can't fight them. Can't fight him, people, so I'll just have to show you that later on. I put out a pre-stream talkie vlog about Letitia James. We're going to talk about it. There's just too much to talk about. Fani Willis, Letitia James, Donald Trump, everything. Julian Assange. Holy cows, did I get to take a trip down memory lane. All right, but before we do any of that, people, I got a little more on the intro stuff until Bobby Bonds gets here. Good evening. How goes the battle, people? It's been a wild couple of weeks. For those of you who are new to the channel, my shirt's not all that clean. My name is Viva Fry on the internet, but it's actually David Freiheit in real life. David means beloved, actually in Hebraic, and Freiheit, for those of you who don't know, means freedom in German. Beloved freedom, it's great. Former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler. And a lot of you might have discovered this channel during the Letitia James trial, which continues on Friday, March 1st. It's going to be the most glorious day ever. What we do on the Sunday night shows, for those of you who are new, we have an amazing, kick-ass, monstrous Sunday night show. It's the best part of Sunday nights. It's like this replaces Once Upon a Time 60 Minutes for education, information, and learning about the world around you. We start on YouTube, Rumble, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com, and I'll check that we're live there. We are live there. Dune1 says, hello, Viva. We got some memes in there. Now for the ad, Viva, says Sophia Agape. Yes, we start on YouTube, Rumble, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And then at some point, we vote with our feet, we vote with our eyes, and we vote with our dollar, and we move over to Rumble exclusively. When we're done on Rumble, we then go over to the after party on vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where we answer tipped questions of $5 and more and have our chat there. Rumble is working, people. I just showed it as evidence. I'm going to stop entertaining this. Refresh it if it's not working. People in the chat, assuming that this is of good faith and not a troll, just let them know. Refresh it. It's working. Now, let me make sure, because I'm neurotic. Some of you may or may not know. Wildly neurotic. I won't say debilitatingly neurotic, but it certainly makes me check door handles and stoves, and make sure the car's locked. Although I don't really care about that, but make sure that I clicked off that little thing that says, this stream contains a paid promotion, because it does, people. And it's not just that. Who's calling me? Oh, we got an Amber Alert in the Palm Beach County. Okay. This stream does contain a paid promotion, and it is one which everyone, and I'm saying this is not financial advice, this is just common sense, people. Gold is like real Bitcoin that you can actually hold in your hand. And we're heading towards a place in the world. I don't know, if the poo-poo hits the fan, what good is gold going to do? I don't know, but I think it's going to be better than having your bank accounts frozen by a corrupt government. Because we are heading to the era of what they call CBDC, CDBC, Central Digital Bank Currency. And it is something that can, and if Justin Trudeau and other tyrants have their way, will replace actual currency. With it comes surveilling our lives, freezing our assets, shutting down our bank accounts, telling us what we can and cannot buy, or if we can buy if we've been good citizens. Americans who want to protect their liberty and privacy need to prepare for themselves for what's to come. That's why Americans are turning to physical gold and silver to diversify their wealth. Now, I've got a bunch of old silver coins that my grandmother left me, although she might not have left them to me. When she passed away, I ended up with her little bag of old, they're not really worth anything, silver dollars. Nobody else of my family asked for them. But holding physical gold, you can buy a stock, and a stock is worth nothing at the end of the day. Physical gold, people. And if you want to protect your retirement, I recommend you ask for the free investment guide coming from Preserve Gold today by texting Viva to 50505. And I don't know how they knew that my favorite number is 5. Text Viva to 5055, 50505. They'll explain the proper options to you. They'll help you discuss rolling it over into an IRA or a 401k. I have no idea what that's all about. Don't yet have one of those in the States. And they make it easy. Preserve Gold, Triple B, the Bureau of Better Business, is accredited with 0 consumer complaints and hundreds of satisfied clients. They are also founding members of the Precious Metals Association, so you know you're in good hands. And as an exclusive offer to all of my viewers, they'll give you up to $10,000 in free gold and silver with a qualifying purchase or retirement account rollover. They will even throw in an immediate $500 account credit if you request your investor guide today. PreserveGold.com/Viva. It's in the description and the link to get your free gold and silver investment guide. Take the first step towards protecting your wealth, or text Viva to 50505. It's a palindrome, 50505. Oh, it's also SOS. If you want to go by the SOSOS, if you want to go by the letter 5 means S as well. Preserve Gold. PreserveGold.com/Viva. Text Viva to 5055. By the way, I just want to take this out of here because, look, I've never done it before, but I did it. This one, I ordered one. And now I'm pulling a little Fani Willis here. I got as an ode to Canada, I got the $50 Queen Elizabeth gold coin. So if the poo-poo hits the fan, if it hits the fanny, and I need to run, I can stick this where the sun don't shine, like the guy out of Pulp Fiction. And I'm also pulling a little Fani Willis because I realized, who the hell keeps cash in the house? I didn't realize I was being an irresponsible woman. Sorry, I can't help it. But that's it. You're holding an actual Bitcoin, and gold has been particularly good. Silver is good as well, and some might say undervalued. No financial advice, but I don't really think you can go wrong by at least having one or two that you can stick up your butt if the poo-poo hits the fan, hit the road. Viva, text it to 50505, preservegold.com/Viva. The link is in the description. Okay, boom. Now what do we talk about? Do we want to talk about what's going on in Canada? Freezing. Oh God, depending on where you hide it, you might be digging. 6 months of cash, people. That's 6 months of cash per person. So it's absurd. But anyhow, you know, one little gold coin. It's like idolatry, except it's actually worth something. So, you know, you shave a little off and buy an apple if things go way south. All right, people, I had another video in the backdrop that I wanted to bring up tonight because it's amazing. Something that may or may not appreciate with value, but I saw one in the wild, and it's a thing of beauty. We saw a Tesla truck as we were driving. Hold on, we gotta wave. Hey, oh, look at that. That's so cool. That is so cool. Dude, I don't know who's in it, but it's amazing. Amazing. Oh, beautiful. Magnificent. You can see fingerprints on the side of it. So you can see the fingerprints. Shh, don't ever poo-poo. It's got bulletproof doors. Do I roll down the window and say, I'm rolling down the window? I'm doing it.
Yeah, do it.
I'm doing it. It's amazing. It's a beautiful thing. I love it.
They're not.
They don't want to pay attention to us.
Is that a solar panel in the back?
I believe that is a solar panel in the back.
Oh, I just spilled water all over me.
And then the front.
The Cybertruck from. How rare? Well, have you ever seen one before?
It's.
That's the front of the Cybertruck.
Now I'm taking some flack.
So you can only get it through the side view mirror. Oh, it's beautiful. It's a thing of beauty. Okay, we've seen one in the wild. Our lives are complete, or at least the day.
Now I'm taking some flack on the Twitterverse because some people are saying it's not beautiful. One does not know how it's going to age. So in 50 years, is that going to look like the 70s bell bottoms in the year 2020? I don't know, but it's beautiful. And it basically looks like a vehicular unidentified flying object. It looks like a vehicular UFO. And then the question is this is ugly, would never buy one. They weigh 6,600 pounds. They are tanks. They accelerate from, 60 to 100 in 3 seconds. I prefer the looks of the Bronco, but it was still a thing of beauty to see in the wild. It seems we might have our first victim of TDS tonight. Convict Trump. Don't worry about it. If Letitia James has her way, it's an amazing thing. A man who makes it through his entire life without having run-ins with the law, all of a sudden becomes the number one criminal, only being persecuted and prosecuted by the criminals themselves. I'll bring that up in a second if there's time. Okay, before Barnes gets here, let me do a number of these super chats, people. Oh, I'm sorry. I almost forgot one thing that I absolutely must do. Google, give, send, go, Kayla Pollock. I'm talking about this because we're talking about it tonight, so I'll get it in a second. But before I get there, everybody, let me go through some of these super chats. YouTube takes 30% of these super chats. If you want to support the channel, one great way to do it is by going to Rumble and giving a Rumble rant. Rumble takes 0% of those. Or go to vivabarneslaw.locals.com and sign up $10 a month, $100 a year if you want to have a ton of exclusive stuff as perks as a supporter. Robert will know this. Why didn't Trump pardon Assange 4 years ago? We're definitely talking about it. I just want to say, actually, before we even get into these things, if you're so inclined, people, I interviewed a woman named Kayla Pollock, who was paralyzed, became a quadriplegic from a booster of the Moderna jab. She's suing Moderna in Canada for tens of millions of dollars. I'm not optimistic on the lawsuit, but I'll certainly cross my fingers. But there's no amount of money that can possibly compensate her or other vax-injured people for what they've gone through. She needs she's got a Give, Send, Go going. The Canadian government has abandoned her to the point of actually unsolicited offering her maids, medical assistance and dying. I won't talk about it again because I talked about it at length. If you are so inclined, and I ask, it's obviously, don't give to me and give to her if you can. The link to the Give, Send, Go is here. We're over $51,000 now, which is great because it was at $30,000 the day of the interview. That's the link there. And we're going to talk about her lawsuit against Moderna tonight. And I believe that we might also be on Dr. Drew Thursday night talking about it. Okay, now I'm going to get back to the super chats here. Seize the day says, but the path of the just is like the shining sun, that shines ever brighter unto the perfect day. Proverbs 4:18, honk, honk, dance, dance, Trump. That's Seize the day we met in person in Ottawa. Pastor Moyer says, wouldn't it be fun someday to have so few pressing and horrible issues happening in the world that it makes it hard to find enough topics to discuss? Yes, I could get back to fishing when that happens. Quantum Strange Quark says, if Letitia James and the corrupt New York courts devalue the Trump properties to ridiculously low amounts, Trump should immediately sue for years of overpaid taxes on those properties. What good is it suing in a communist regime? Oh, yeah. And Otto Warmbier's family should sue Kim Jong-un for wrongful death. It's just like we're not dealing with justice anymore. Rumble is not working. Refresh it. It is. Cash is fungible. Kevin O'Donnell. Gold is too. You just got to find a place to buy it. We got breaking. Area 51 goes on high alert after Winston's flatulence. Emanations found to be broadcasting on known alien frequency, say experts. Viva, I never catch a live, so I just want to say I love you. You're the best. You make us laugh, and you're food for my soul. Viva la Viva. Lucy Gibbs, thank you very much. Rumble is working. I just confirmed. Now, just to show you that Rumble is in fact working, we're going to go. I see some Rumble rants there, and until Barnes gets in the house, we got time to do these. Do these. Okay, we got Britt Cormier says, let me see here. Hush your hippie mouth and bring on Barnes. Just kidding. Beauty is subjective. I do not care about looks. I just cannot bring myself to buy an electric vehicle. That's the reality. 250 miles on a full tank. Oh, but the thing is, it's kind of cool. Tesla truck is the AMC Pacer of the present day. I don't know what that means. King of Biltong, Aaron, I just saw the email that you sent me, so I'll get you an address to send it to. But he says, good afternoon from Anton's in Roanoke, Texas. Free shipping for your Biltong with code VIVA on www.biltongusa.com and antonusa.com. Biltong, it's like beef jerky from what I understand, wet beef jerky, high protein. Link to the Future says, at this point, I'm convinced that Taylor Lorenz has a crush on Shia. She used all her resources to find out who Libs of TikTok was, visited Shia and her family's home, and now she's taking Shia out for coffee. Viva's first reflex when the poo-poo hits the fan, stick things up his butt. We got Momo F. Kyler says, South Carolina here, proud to say we did our part of the group project yesterday, and we did it well. I love people spinning that they think it's a defeat for Trump, what happened yesterday. Let me just make sure that Barnes has the link. I'm sure he's got it. Link? Bonji boy, let's see where he is. You've got the link, comma, right? Question mark? Oh, Lordy. So that's it. I think he does have the link. It's going to be one heck of... So now, what do we do? Let me see. Are we good on Rumble? We are. We're at 12,000 and some odd. Okay, good. And then we got Honk Honk with the Diagolon. Kenzie67. Yeah, I'm downplaying and watching Viva just fine. Downloading and watching Viva just fine. Yeah, everyone says it's fine. Okay. Well, hold on. You know what? Until Barnes gets here, I'll do the Canadian one. Let me pull up this lawsuit. Let me just see. I had it in the backdrop. It is right here. Kayla. So Kayla... The woman that I had on earlier this week, or yeah, well, I don't know what day it is anymore. It's Sunday. She mentioned that she's suing Pfizer to me, and I got a copy of the lawsuit. It's public, so I'm not really showing anything confidential. I'm going to go present screen window, and here it is. So this is out of Canada. The question is going to be how anyone is going to circumvent the immunity that was granted to these pharma companies. This is Kayla Pollock. Plaintiff versus Moderna Therapeutics. Okay, we're going to go. This is the notice to appear. The claim here, plaintiff Kayla Pollock, non-pecuniary damage, pain and suffering, emotional, psychological impacts, $5 million. Compensatory damages for loss of future earnings, $2.5 million. Compensatory damages for future cost of care, $10 million. People are under the impression that there's like any amount of money that can be compensatory for what she's going through. She needs a wheelchair accessible vehicle. It costs $100,000 Canadian. $2 million. And look, aggravated punitive damages. I mean, I'll say good luck with that in Canada because we don't get $25 million awards. And it goes through how basically Moderna made claims which they had no business making. Safe and effective, didn't warn people of side effects, potential adverse events that they knew about. And people not in full awareness of fact and law went ahead and did it and suffered irreversible, irremediable consequences. And the government immunized these manufacturers, these pharma companies, while simultaneously admitting that they cut corners everywhere, including in manufacturing. Barnes is in the backdrop, people. He's just come in, and we'll bring him in. Robert, how goes the battle, sir?
Good.
Okay, you're back to a tie now. I'm not saying that I don't like the bow tie. I prefer the tie, and that is a good one. Sir, what's the book? You have David Mamet, The Secret Knowledge behind you. What's the book about?
Yeah, it's about the, it's his sort of political awakening. He was a sort of a conventional, traditional liberal that became much more of a conservative in response to the Cultural Revolution and part of the insanity and inanity of wokeness. It's one of our great screenplay writers, one of our great playwrights. The Glengarry Glen Ross is David Mamet as just one illustrative example. He had a good interview recently describing in very simplified form both the insanity of the woke religion and its infection of Hollywood, as well as the reason why Trump, in his view, was going to win. He put it simple. Under Trump, good economy, no war. Under Biden, lots of war, crap economy. The math is simple. But brilliant storyteller. One of my favorite books of his is 3 Uses of the Knife, about a blues song and how it explains the neurological need of the human species for narrative. And it was brilliant and revelatory and revolutionary in my own perspective on understanding the psychology of persuasion and storytelling. So great author, great person. Some people said, could we have him on Sidebar? Love to have him on Sidebar. If somebody knows a way to reach him, absolutely.
David Mamet also is the author of one of my favorite expressions, "Every fear hides a wish," which I use very often because it's a telling thing. Robert, but we'll finish off with what I started talking about, the Moderna lawsuit, and we'll talk about what else we had because this wasn't on the list. How do you think, what is going to be the best legal strategy to bypass the immunity that the government gave the pharma companies? My thought is that, on the one hand, how do you verify what the product administered was, compound-wise, to what product was approved? And if it turns out that the product that they were injecting was substantially materially different than the product that was approved, would the argument then be, well, they weren't immunized for that particular product? Would the argument be that they didn't provide what they were required to by law, so therefore immunity doesn't apply? And or subsidiarily, fraud vitiates everything, and they made statements and representations that they had no business making, therefore any immunity that they were bestowed shouldn't exist.
Is this a Canadian suit or an American suit?
This one's a Canadian suit, but it's
going to vary by jurisdiction, because in the United States, you have to get around the PrEP Act. So in most places, the government provided certain immunity before Pfizer or Moderna allowed their product to be distributed. And so it'll depend on the specifics of that governing jurisdiction. In the U.S., it's complicated because it goes beyond the immunity extended by the Defense Department. It goes to the PrEP Act's immunity, and that's the most problematic area to get around. Now, there is an issue that if you receive something different than what was identified as a PrEP Act countermeasure, then there's an argument you can pursue litigation even here in the States. And there's a range of lawyers that are looking at whether that option provides an alternative. But it's probably easier to sue in Canada, frankly, than it is in the U.S. because of the scope of the PrEP Act in the U.S.
And I do wonder if that statement made by a government official to the effect that, they were rushing R&D. It usually takes many years, and they bypassed that. They were rushing production. There were a number of recalls. If a number of that, it can serve as any sort of evidence as to who the hell knows what was given to people. And who the hell knows why they made certain warranties and representations when they had no business making them. So that to be followed, by the way, I'll do a separate breakdown of that lawsuit. It's very similar to one that I had already covered in the past, and I'll be on with Dr. Drew, I believe, and Kayla on Thursday, so stay tuned for that. Robert, what do we have on the menu for tonight?
We got Trump brought a big motion to dismiss the classified documents case on multiple grounds. We have Big Fani perjury, which was the co-favorite along with the Assange extradition hearing on our board for the top topic of the night. RussiaGate 2.0, the insanity of a particular judge getting a hold of that case. The NCAA suffers a major loss about its attempts to control the NIL marketplace. Trump appealing the New York verdict and the efforts there to preclude having to pay a huge amount as a condition of being able to effectively appeal. Both that and the other federal case, both with insane verdicts that he's facing, both where they're trying to bankrupt him before he can use any of those funds for his campaign. The CBS reporter fired and record seized. That was an investigative reporter exposing Joe Biden. The Disney loses a major vaccine mandate motion in California courts. The New York court recognizing that non-citizen voting is still illegal under New York law. Sad that you had to have a court even say that. Rumble has their big Second Circuit argument they had last week, but also got a big win with the SEC this week. Jeffrey Epstein disclosures of the Florida State Grand Jury. Sex ed for kids is pending before the federal courts. Hotels involved in price fixing. And last but not least, an Amos Miller update. We filed our brief on that this past week. And the hearing is this upcoming Thursday afternoon in Lancaster County Court of Common Pleas.
Well, you know what? If you don't mind, let's do Amos Miller now while we have the audiences on both platforms, and then get to the first topic. So what is the status of Amos Miller now? He's been having more and more problems.
So what they've done is first they detained a bunch of food in his freezer and refrigerator. Then they ordered its destruction. And not only ordered its destruction, they told him that that he couldn't feed his own family with a bunch of it, that he couldn't even feed his own pigs with it. This came after their own testing confirmed that almost all of the food was completely safe and had nothing at issue with it at all. They ordered food they knew to be safe, destroyed, and not allowed for anyone to consume it. Then they started telling him what could be used for personal use and what couldn't. They were dictating a farmer from his own freezer could feed his own family and what could feed his own pigs. Told him you can't use this, you can't use that, you can't even feed your own pigs with it. This was food, again, that they had tested and came back clear. They'd been hiding the testing results for more than a month. They just released them on Friday after multiple demands by my office. And the testing results showed what I suspected all along, that they had claimed that there was E. coli, certain E. coli in Amos Miller's food, based on an unconfirmed report out of New York. Their own testing showed there was no E. coli in his food. None of that strain existed. And also, they tested for salmonella. Didn't exist. They tested for listeria. Listeria didn't exist in almost any of the samples. Only a small percentage of samples had listeria. We had independently tested that. It came from a third-party farmer providing some milk, and he just cut that off and got rid of it. It means his food has now been tested, his environment's now been tested, his water samples have been tested, come back clean. And yet they are still there's still an injunction in place prohibiting him from distributing any raw milk-related product. They are seeking a complete shutdown of the farm. The hearing on Thursday is whether the raw milk-related injunction will stay in place. This is a power they legally don't have. That, in fact, we've found no precedent in the history of Pennsylvania where any court has stopped a farmer from farming. Just doesn't exist. In fact, haven't found an example anywhere in the country where this authority has been given. Pennsylvania law is quite clear that the only power that the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture is given as it relates to the destruction of food is that it be proven that it's unfit for human consumption. The Secretary Redding's destruction order doesn't make that claim at all. Doesn't say any of it is unsafe for human consumption. Instead, in fact, doesn't claim it's adulterated. Instead, the only claim is that it didn't have a label on the package saying PDA approved, even though it's not PDA approved, and that's the way the people want it. They want it the Amish way, not the PDA way.
And that's Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture approved. Does it need to be for any particular under any
No, I
compelling
mean,
piece of legislation?
it's preposterous at multiple levels. The law in Pennsylvania, according to the Attorney General's own opinions, dating from the inception of these laws, said that state inspection power only begins at, quote, the retail shelf. This food was taken from his own freezer. It wasn't on a retail shelf. The law, the definition of packaging, it only applies once it's on the retail shelf. None of this needed to be packaged. None of it was packaged. So their claim that, it wasn't branded the way we want it branded has no application. Once it is packaged, it lists the source, it lists the ingredients. But it wasn't being packaged. They're claiming that goods have to be packaged when they're sitting in your own freezer as a farmer. There's no basis for that. It's directly contrary to Pennsylvania law. So the brief is being shared. There was also hundreds of declarations filed from all across the country, almost 400 sworn declarations of people testifying under penalty of perjury that they want and need Amos Miller's products as members of his organic farm in order for their own health. In some cases for religious reasons, some cases for politically expressive reasons, but in some cases necessary to their children's health. And right now they're being denied it, and their children's health is being put in danger. The state of Pennsylvania continues to lie and say this is about safety and about consumer choice. They know it's not. That we have sworn testimony that the only allegation from over almost a decade ago that said that any raw milk product of Amos Miller caused any harm, the caretaker has testified now under penalty of perjury that the grandmother they identified as being sickened by raw milk actually never even drank raw milk, and she had 4th stage cancer. So the state of Pennsylvania has known this, and they lied about it. What they've done is they've just lied repeatedly because they assume the Pennsylvania courts will be rubber stamps for their misuse and abuse of power. And the Pennsylvania legislature is asleep because they've been listening to the mainstream media just regurgitate like stenographers. That's what most of them are. They're not journalists in Pennsylvania. They're just stenographers. Whatever the state tells them, they just write and repeat that these lies about Amos Miller. Amos Miller has produced literally millions of food products over a quarter century. If you go back to his father and his grandfather and his great-grandfather, all of them farmers right there in Lancaster County, have produced all kinds of food product, and you won't find Amos Miller ever listed on a recall anywhere by the state of Pennsylvania in that entire history. In fact, they have produced not one single piece of evidence of one single member of Amos Miller's organic farm that has ever complained about Amos Miller's food products. To the opposite, they want and need and demand his product. The state of Pennsylvania is claiming the authority that if it's not PDA approved, you're not allowed to have it in your fridge anymore. You're not allowed to have it in your freezer anymore. You're not allowed to feed your own family with it anymore. You're not even allowed to feed your own pigs with it anymore. This is an extraordinary power grab built on extraordinary lies, and they depend entirely on the culpability and complicity of the Pennsylvania courts not doing their job and holding the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture to account. My guess is the Agriculture Secretary, Redding, who has signed off on these illicit and unauthorized detention orders, these illicit and unauthorized food destruction orders, explicitly beyond his statutory authority and in violation of what Pennsylvania courts have said is their constitutional constraint on their authority, that you watch, he won't be there on Thursday afternoon. My prediction is Secretary Redding will be hiding in Harrisburg rather than show up and defend his lawless actions because he can't defend his lawless actions. What we're going to find out is whether the Pennsylvania courts will enforce the law when it comes to the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture or not. We'll find out on Thursday afternoon.
But this started with the federal government. How did it?
All really started with the state of Pennsylvania. So okay. There's a lawyer at Penn State that has been demanding, that's part of a center, agricultural center, by the way, that is funded by big corporate agriculture, that has been trying to wipe out small family farmer competition from the inception, have misused and abused these regulations and the regulatory state to enrich and empower themselves at the expense of the small family farmer. We went from 1 out of 5 food products being created and produced by the small family farmer to less than 2% of all food today in America. 98% of food is controlled by corporatized, industrialized farmers. These regulations are designed to bankrupt small farmers. You cannot compete if you're under their regulatory restrictions. And the other deep irony in all this is that they claim it's for food safety and consumer choice, when what they're trying to do is take away consumer choice. And we now know from a half century is that they are horrible at, say, food safety. That raw milk doesn't produce the most listeria outbreaks. Pasteurized milk does. Even though the FDA and the PDA have been claiming for years falsely that pasteurization gets rid of all the bad bacteria. Now, one problem is it also definitely gets rid of a lot of the good bacteria, but it turns out they're wrong. Corporatized industrialized food is the main, in fact, it's about 99.9% of all food outbreaks, all pathogen outbreaks, all food recalls come from the corporatized industrialized food made the PDA way. That's why ordinary people don't want it that way anymore. And all you can do is take a Photoshop of all the unhealthy lard asses at the PDA and realize people don't want to eat their way. They more and more people, this is about a tiny little share of the food market getting to choose what goes into their own body, and about a tiny little share of the food market being able to be family farmers and sustainable. And they don't want them to be. They know that the moment they have a regulatory a restraint on the back of these small family farmers, they wipe them out. They also demand that the farmer add chemicals, add additives, add preservatives to food that people don't want. We know it doesn't work. We have, as Robert Kennedy keeps talking about, a chronic health epidemic in the United States, a chronic disease epidemic in the United States. And it's directly related to our food supply becoming corporatized and industrialized. People who've done their own individual research look at the Amish, and they see that the Amish lifestyle produces healthier, happier people that live longer lives with fewer and less disease. So some people want to benefit from that. The state of Pennsylvania doesn't want to let you benefit from that. It wants to prohibit you from benefiting from that. It also exposes how their regulatory system is a scam. It doesn't produce safe food. It produces unsafe food. The most dangerous food in the state of Pennsylvania is food that's been PDA approved, PDA permitted, PDA licensed. Like 99.9% of food recalls come from PDA permitted facilities because they don't know what they're doing. They're all bureaucrats. Almost none of them have ever farmed a day in their lives. And you know where they go to work after they work for the government? Basically, they get bribed while they're in the government because then they go and work for the same big corporations they were supposedly regulating while they were in office. So it's one big fat fraud. And the case against Amos Miller is a case meant to destroy food freedom and small farmers in America. And if it succeeds, it will set a perilous precedent for everybody everywhere. And that's why the case is so consequential. There's going to be a rally before around 11:30 or so, late morning that Thursday in Lancaster County in support of Amos Miller. It does appear the court will not allow the case to be broadcast, will not allow the case to be, you won't be able to have video access or any access unless you're physically inside the courtroom, which has limited space available to it. So you got to get there early to be able to get space, it would appear. I'll find out on Monday if the court will change its mind on that, but that's my understanding at the moment. There are some witnesses that will be allowed to testify remotely, which is good because there's people who really want to testify, but for health reasons cannot physically get themselves to Lancaster County. But it's deeply disturbing what the state is up to. This is an extraordinary power grab. And, I am starting to hear from more Pennsylvania legislators who are shocked. They didn't realize, they thought this was just about making sure the food was safe. They didn't realize it has nothing to do with the food safety. Both the detention order and the destruction order says nothing about the food being dangerous at all. Nothing about the food being unfit for human consumption. And that's the legal predicate to destroy any food under the laws in Pennsylvania. But they're just ignoring it. They're saying we can now go in and take your property and destroy your food and destroy your opportunity to purchase food solely because it isn't a PDA approved facility in the first place.
But as a pure matter of fact, much of the food has already been destroyed, wasted, spoiled.
Yeah, yes, a lot of it already has been, and their goal is to destroy the rest of it, and to even prohibit him from feeding his own pigs with it, even prohibiting him from feeding his own family with it. Again, power that they do not have by law, that the Pennsylvania courts have repeatedly ruled it would be unconstitutional under the Pennsylvania Constitution. And we're challenging it on the grounds of the U.S. Constitution as well. You should have the liberty interest of the Due Process Clause of the United States Constitution should at a minimum protect the longest traditional liberty in American history, which is the ability to buy food directly from its producer, particularly traditional foods such as dairy, meat, and poultry. But you know what PDA says? PDA says the only healthy poultry is if you stick a bunch of chickens in a tiny little factory farm where they eat each other's dung, and then that's a healthy food, not the kind made on a free range and by an organic farmer doing it the way they've done it for centuries. That couldn't possibly be safe. The only thing that could be safe is when your animals are eating each other's dung.
And I was going to say, like, even with the labeling that they put on some of these bigger brand things to make it seem like they're free range and open air, it's so often mislabeling that it's effectively false advertising. I just wanted to bring this up, Robert. It's amazing. Just like, listeria outbreaks. This is on the CDC from grocery cheese and deli meat.
And supposedly that can't happen. And again, I mean, they're putting this microscope on an unidentified amount of listeria being in a very small amount of his food supply, that the source was identified and taken care of. It's now completely clear. And it's on a farmer that has had the lowest rate of food safety incidents of any farmer in the state of Pennsylvania. I mean, given the amount of food he's produced over a quarter century, to have zero complaints from consumers of safety issues, and that's the guy you're trying to take out? While every day in Pennsylvania, somebody has to issue a food recall from these big corporatized, industrialized, commercialized food producers and processors, none of whom are ever raided, none of whom ever have food detained, none of whom ever have food destroyed, none of whom ever have an injunction issued against them. And I mean, and Redding keeps going around lying to people saying, "Oh, we've been trying to work with Amos Miller." Complete fraud, complete lie. I've been his counsel now for many years. PDA didn't reach out one single time. Because they did in their internal emails, they joked about what they wanted to have happen to Amos Miller. And you know what it was? They kept showing pictures of Amish in handcuffs. They wanted him in handcuffs. That's who they are. They're liars and frauds. And the only question is whether the Pennsylvania court will uphold the law or defer and cower to the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. That's the only question. And all the legislators asleep at the wheel in Pennsylvania better wake up, because this power is going to be used and misused and abused to wipe out small family farmers and organic farmers in the state. They're not coming after Amos Miller to stop at Amos Miller. They're coming after Amos Miller to get the rest of us.
Amos Miller will be the agricultural equivalent of Alex Jones. I'm just going to bring this up because it's funny. Just because I have an old lady crush on Mr. Sexy Viva Guy. I know it's not your name, but oh well. My mom came from Nova Scotia. She'd puke about Canada, if alive. Well, I was going to say that I was going to make I'm not even going to make the joke about what they want to do with the Amish farmer, Amos Miller. I was going to analogize it to Julian Assange to segue into that. I'm just going to say, speaking of corrupt government action, Robert, we'll do Julian Assange, and then we're going to end on YouTube. I've messaged the team at Rumble, so they're looking into it. And for those who are having issues, hopefully it'll be resolved. We're going to do the two big. We'll get some spotlight on these two decisions, and then we're going to go over to Rumble after this. Julian Assange, Robert. I went back and put together a montage of you and I back now 3 years, talking about Julian Assange. Going back to the beginning, we don't need to go back to the beginning, but what a coincidence it was that they came after him for rape right after the WikiLeaks, where they were just trying to find a way to arrest him and extradite him. He was holed up at Ecuadorian embassy. They kicked him out following arguably some external influence. UK police arrested him right away, sentenced him to 50 weeks for breach of bail conditions, which he posted prior to going into hiding. Give or take. And then, there was a superseding indictment under Trump, espionage charges. I don't know why he's not facing the death penalty or the prospect of. You'll answer that one for me. And he was initially, basically, all of his grounds to contest the extradition were dismissed, except one, which was that he's suicidal, so we're not going to send him back. We'll just lock him up in the shittiest prison in the UK. And then we get assurances that he'll be treated properly by the very same government that was plotting to kill him. And so the higher court said, okay, well, extradition will be allowed, and now he had a 2-day hearing to ask to contest the other grounds opposing his extradition that were dismissed at the time. First question first. People want to blame Trump for the superseding indictment. I know that I'm inclined to want to forgive Trump or not blame Trump because this did occur under his administration. What would be the strongest argument for why Trump would not be responsible for the superseding indictment to bring back Assange on espionage charges?
Trump is partially responsible, no doubt. He should have pardoned Julian Assange. He should have pardoned Edward Snowden. It was under consideration at the end, and my understanding is the reason he did not is because Mitch McConnell told him that if he pardoned either one of them, he would be convicted in the Senate on his impeachment charge. And towards the end there, Trump let people intimidate him based on how they were construing January 6th. And so and that's why I say partially because he could have done something to correct it and he didn't, partially because it happened under his administration, partially because you had Pompeo conspiring to not only illegally spy on Assange, but try to have Assange assassinated. Mike Pence, his vice president, helped coordinate the effort to extradite Assange and remove him from the Ecuadorian embassy. Pence was neck deep in that. And so Trump's partially responsible because he put people in positions of power who put this into motion. And he also could have done something to stop it when he had the chance and didn't. I say only partially because there's no evidence that Trump himself directed any of this, that this was any direct effort of Trump. Trump expressed no particular obsession with Assange, had said positive and supportive things about him during the 2016 campaign. And there's no evidence that Trump directed any of this towards him in a way that Biden seems to have done so. And Hillary Clinton clearly wanted him drone bombed. And, that's been public.
That came from Hillary herself. Yes. But the question would be why he would float the idea of a pardon. Why would he have ever floated the idea of a pardon if it was his idea to indict in the first place?
Correct. It was definitely not his idea to indict. He did not. To my understanding, Richard Grenell has given inadequate explanations on this. It's one reason why I'm skeptical of Richard Grenell. Grenell appeared to be complicit in the effort to remove Assange from the embassy, from the Ecuadorian embassy, so that he would be arrested and imprisoned for potential extradition. So that's why I put an asterisk by him. A lot of people on the right like him because of what he did when he was briefly at the DNI to declassify information concerning RussiaGate. But he has given an inadequate, and some of his key allies were putting pressure on people like Cassandra Fairbanks. I think she's now Cassandra McDonald, to not defend Assange and other things. So I think he's got some culpability on his hands that he's yet to explain and explicate. But there's no evidence that Trump ordered it or that even Trump was kept in the loop at the top as to what was happening, as to what Pence was doing, as to what his own Justice Department under Bill Barr was doing. It's now clear that Bill Barr was working to sabotage Trump most of the time. He came in under the pretext, hey, I'll get rid of Mueller, because he thought Mueller was backfiring publicly and politically. And he did do that. But then he used the grace he was given because of that to undermine Trump and not investigating the election fraud of 2020, undermine Trump and covering up the Biden complicity and criminality that had been documented and demonstrated to his Justice Department for multiple years. Bill Barr was, the Attorney General while not only Julian Assange got indicted, but also while Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, but ended up dead in a prison under his watch.
Did they close
his father had ties, of course, to Jeffrey Epstein going all the way back to his original appointment at the Dalton School. And we now know from Bill Barr's constant advocacy against Trump that he was always working. He was a Bushite. He was working to sabotage Trump all along. So the fact that the key participants, Pompeo and Barr, were behind the Assange extradition and indictment efforts, and that these two men were constantly sabotaging Trump but behind his back, tells you that this was not a Trump-coordinated policy. Trump can be held responsible for putting him into positions of power, a clear mistake that he himself has now acknowledged. But clearly the effort to get Assange was not a Trump effort. But if you're Assange's counsel, you might as well throw Trump in the mix, because you're arguing to judges who are likely anti-Trump. So in the UK, so that's why there was no political benefit to them defending Trump in dealing with Assange. They were going to make it personal to Trump as much as they could because it gave them what shot they have with the UK high courts. But a lot of the attacks on Trump are, I don't think, well deserved.
All right, and now they are. Well, Assange had his 2 days hearing to oppose the extradition, and he's raising. The argument is just to have a rehearing or an appeal on the other grounds.
Yeah, he wasn't initially allowed an appeal on all of his good grounds, which is that he is a political prisoner who exposed state crimes and is being persecuted for that and is at risk of inhuman treatment back in the United States, pretrial imprisonment, a supermax later, and a death penalty punishment. And the U.S. government does what they always do in extradition proceedings. They lie to courts. They have the only thing I would have said more is if I had been on Assange's team, what I would have identified all the times the U.S. government has lied to get people extradited. They do it all the time. They have done it repeatedly. And the reason is U.S. courts don't enforce those promises with any degree of consistency. And so that's what they should have been really hammering home to the UK courts. Now, whether this UK High Court is really independent is an open question. Apparently, one of the judges making the decision has long, deep ties to the intelligence services of Britain, who are the ones pursuing a Julian Assange. Assange is an example, as Amos Miller is an example of food freedom. Julian Assange is an example of whistleblowers exposing deep state criminality. And that is why they're obsessed with making an example out of him. That's why they're obsessed with him dying in an American prison. But in order to get around it, they're saying, don't worry, we'll transfer him to Australia. Don't worry, we'll never send him to Supermax. Don't worry, we won't detain him under conditions that led to the death of Jeffrey Epstein. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not credible statements. It's not credible assurances. But Alexander McCorris of the Duran, who has connections historically to the High Court, said the fact they didn't make an immediate ruling against Assange gives some chance that they'll do the right thing and at least allow the appeal. This wouldn't be ruling in his favor. Would just be allowing the appeal on these key issues.
Delay it so he can spend more time in that horrible prison in the UK. Yeah. Back in the day, though, he wasn't initially charged with Espionage Act violations. As far as I understood, Espionage Act violations carry the death penalty for some of them.
Yes, they absolutely do.
So did
the U.S. government say, we would never seek it. Don't worry. Okay. We'll never seek it. They lie all the time. And they get away with it because they're never held to account by foreign courts.
What's your prediction? I mean, the prediction is only to have he should have a substantive hearing on his contestation. Has it garnered enough public attention, international attention, that they do this even as a matter of like pseudo feigned transparency?
Yeah, I would say 1 in 3 chance, because it's kind of like the Atlanta case with Big Fani. You're banking on the judge being one of either two things: conscientious about the law, and on the law grounds, Assange has robust arguments that are unique to him, that have previously been the grounds to deny extradition in the UK and in other jurisdictions that share the UK's approach to extradition. So that if you're conscientious, you absolutely give him that right to appeal before sending him off to his death in the United States. On the other hand, by the way, there was QAnon people that said it was all part of an inside thing to get Assange released. I hope those people realize how wrong they were all along. That they were being led down a primrose path to rationalize something that was unjust from its inception. But putting that aside, the other thing you hope for is a judge that's politically aware enough to realize that denying Assange merely the right to appeal makes the UK court system look like it is nothing more than the token and tool of the intelligence apparatus and the deep state in Britain. At the same time that Britain is being exposed for spying on President Trump back in 2016 and other illicit behavior. Now, note, Assange still has potential remedy to the EU courts because the UK is a signatory to certain human rights courts that have already expressed an interest in the case if the UK does not grant him his right to appeal. So the other factor with being politically sage and granting him the right to appeal would be avoiding the embarrassing outcome of a European court saying that the UK courts couldn't apply basic law of their own procedure. So if the court is conscientious or the court is politically smart, Assange will get his appeal. It is an open question whether either is true of the high courts of the United Kingdom.
All right, everybody. With that said, that's the link to Rumble. I'm going to give everybody the link one more time to Kayla's Give, Send, Go. I'm going to give everybody the link one more time. It's in the pinned comment to preservegold.com/Viva. Get some gold. And I'm just going to hold it one more time. It's idolatry, Robert, except it's the Queen. She's still on the damn money of Canada. If anybody wants the Queen, they have the American ones as well, but this was an ode to the Queen. And we're not done talking about judicial corruption yet. We've only gotten started, people. Holy sweet merciful crab apples. You got all the links. We're going to end on YouTube. If Rumble is glitching, come on over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Stay for the after party, where we're going to have tons of chats to read. Ending on YouTube. Come on over. Locals or Rumble. Boom. No, I didn't do it yet. Now it's a boom. Boom.